All right, everybody, welcome back into Sports and Money. I am Benjamin Parker. This is the vintage edition of Sports and Money. Really appreciate you being with us today. Hope you're having a good day wherever you're watching this from. Hope life is going well for you. Today, we're taking a look at Derrick Johnson of the Kansas City Chiefs. Most of you know when we do Sports and Money Vintage, we take a look back at somebody who has passed away or retired or switched to another team, and just take a look at their career, some things that may have happened, some money deals that may have happened, some other things that may have happened that history has forgotten about. Now, Derrick Johnson is neither retired nor is he dead. He is very alive and kicking, playing for the Oakland Raiders, getting ready for his first season with them. But he has been moved on from the Kansas City Chiefs after a successful career there, super long career there, highly successful there for the Chiefs. Fans are going to miss him there in Kansas City, but the Chiefs decided to let him go. They'll save about $5 million in cap space in so doing. His production had dipped the past couple of seasons, and they just decided the time was now to move on from Derrick Johnson. They tried to make the defense a little bit younger and a little bit stronger up front as well. So Kansas City Chiefs fans are going to miss him. Let's take a look back at what happened to Derrick Johnson, his career. Some fascinating things. He came out of the University of Texas. He played football, high school football in Waco. Highly recruited coming out of high school, huge athlete. People from all over the country wanted him. Matt Brown from the Longhorns program was able to get him. Matt Brown was in the process of building one of the all-time great programs there at the University of Texas. Derrick Johnson was just one of a large number of highly regarded recruits that were coming through Texas at the time, but Derrick Johnson was just right there with the great ones of all time there at the University of Texas. All he did while he was there was post 458 tackles. That is an eye-popping number. But in college, that's over 100 tackles a season that he was posting for the University of Texas. So he was a tackling machine. He could hold up against the run. He could get after ball carriers. He knew how to find the football. Not only that, he had 9 interceptions. 9 interceptions. He is not a safety. He is not a cornerback. He is a linebacker. And in college, he posted 9 interceptions. The interesting part of that is most of those came in a cluster. The sophomore and junior seasons each saw 4 interceptions from Derrick Johnson. So he showed that he was really comfortable in space. He was really comfortable guarding tight ends and running backs. He was really comfortable being a ball hawk and finding the ball even when it was in the air and having instincts for where the football was going, and had some good soft hands for a linebacker. Those are huge interception numbers for a linebacker in college. Not only that, 11 forced fumbles in his career there for the University of Texas. Now that may not seem like a lot, but 9 of those came in his senior season. So in his senior season, not only did he show in all 4 seasons that he could tackle, not only did he show in years 2 and 3 at Texas that he could guard people and intercept the football, in his senior season he showed that he could learn how to strip the football from people as well. Whether running back, quarterback, he had shown the ability, the attribute to create turnovers by stripping the football and by forcing fumbles. So he really was the whole package. He was never a sack machine in any point in his career. Not at Kansas City, not at Texas. But what he showed he could do was everything. The guy was a tackling machine. He was comfortable in space. He was an athlete. He knew how to strip the football. And so really coming out of college, he was highly regarded. A lot of people expected him to really possibly, he had the potential to be one of the next great all-time linebackers. And that's why the Kansas City Chiefs drafted him. They got him at number 15 overall, which at that point was a bit of a steal. It's just the way the draft worked out that year. They had huge expectations for him. His first 4 seasons, I didn't put them on the board today. His first 4 seasons are good, but not great. They are solid, but not satisfying. They are productive. He is producing, but they're not getting what they want out of him. The Chiefs just aren't getting what they want out of Derrick Johnson. They know he has more potential. They know it's untapped. He's averaging 90 tackles a season, which is good, but it's not great. It's not the 458 tackles that he showed at Texas that he had the ability for. Remember, he's not producing a lot of sacks. He's getting about 1 sack a season during his first 4 years. Also, he's not producing a lot of interceptions. He's getting about 1 of those a season as well during his first 4 seasons. So even though he was producing his first 4 years at Kansas City, they just weren't getting the greatness that we have seen later in Derrick Johnson's career. It's interesting to look back at this. Season number 5 rolls around. It's 2009. Everybody's expecting a huge jump out of Derrick Johnson. This is his contract year. Usually for players, if you haven't seen them explode during their first set of seasons, when it comes around to contract time, you see that explosion, you see it just finally click, you see it finally kick in the gear. This was the year the Chiefs were actually hoping that he would explode, and instead, his playing time goes down. Season number 5, the year he's hoping to parlay into a huge contract, and you know he and his agent would have talks about this, as would any player and any agent. This is the year that you got to show it. Todd Haley was the coach of the Chiefs at the time. Whether it was miscommunication, as we heard later from Derrick Johnson, or whether the Chiefs just didn't like what they were getting out of Derrick Johnson, or whether they wanted to show what somebody else to get some playing time. He plays in 15 of 16 games that season, but his playing time goes way down. He's basically coming off the bench. He only gets 37 tackles. It's a disaster of a year for Derrick Johnson. It's almost a waste of a year. It's a big zero of a year, and this was supposed to be his contract season, the one he was really supposed to show what he could do. So his career is at total crossroads. During that offseason, the Chiefs are only able to sign him to a 1-year, $2.6 million. That is a nothing deal for a guy who had so much talent and so much promise, and who really, in his first 4 seasons, had shown that he could produce. All they could get together on was a 1-year, $2.6 million. Season number 6 starts. They get November. He's playing a lot better. Things are clicking. And they're able to sign him to a 6-year, $36.5 million deal. Now, if Derrick Johnson had played really well in any of his first 5 seasons, he probably would have been able to sign something more like a 5-year, $45 million deal. But because it clicked so late, it didn't show up till season number 6. The Chiefs were actually taking a chance here by signing him to a 6-year contract. They hadn't seen enough to really necessarily warrant that. A lot of NFL teams would have passed on that. But who knows, if Derrick Johnson had played better in his first 4 seasons, first 5 seasons, he might not even be on the Chiefs. He might have been able to sign a much bigger contract with somebody else. But because season number 5 was such a disaster, and the first 4 seasons were so passé, he was able to turn this into only 6 years, $36.5 million contract. Now, it's still a lot of money. Derrick Johnson still did really well for himself, but I think you could have seen more out of that if it just clicked earlier. This is really unusual, and this is what's so interesting about Derrick Johnson's career arc. For most athletes, it's very different. For most athletes, you see something out of them during their first set of seasons, and then they get that huge contract. For Derrick Johnson, it was the opposite. He gets the big contract, and then he shows what he can do. All he does in 2010 career season: 121 tackles, 1 sack, 1 interception. Explodes off the page with a career year. In 2011, more of the same: 131 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. 2012, 125 tackles, 2 sacks, no picks. Then at 13, 107 tackles with 4.5 sacks, no picks. So he really just exploded off the page after he got the big contracts. Like I said, for a lot of athletes, it's the opposite. Sometimes after they get the big contract, you even say their play dip a little bit. They don't always fall to pieces, but sometimes you just see their play kind of level off. For Derrick Johnson, he explodes after he gets the massive contract. And that's really a fascinating thing for me to see out of Derrick Johnson, because we all know the Derrick Johnson that did this right here. And even in 2014, he would tear his Achilles and lose almost the whole year. Come back in 2015 off an Achilles tear and has a monster of a year, one of his 5 best seasons ever again in 2015. That's the Derrick Johnson that we all know and have come to appreciate. It's the Derrick Johnson that was highly recruited out of Waco. It's the Derrick Johnson that showed up in the University of Texas. But that was not the Derrick Johnson that showed up in any of the first 4 seasons, and the Derrick Johnson in his 5th season almost disappeared. So it's fascinating to watch how he got that money and how he showed up later in his career. Really a late developer, didn't really show it until season number 6. Something to keep in mind when you're looking at other guys that are out there and maybe struggling. The Chiefs were taking a chance here. I don't know that I necessarily would have given him that 6-year deal. The Chiefs did, and they were highly rewarded for it. They guessed right on Derrick Johnson. They absolutely nailed it. 2016 rolls around. He signs a 3-year, $21 million deal. Not huge money, but good solid money for Derrick Johnson. Signs a 3-year, $21 million. The Chiefs roll around a season later and ask him to restructure the contract. So it turns into, at that point, a 2-year, $10.3 million deal. Basically what the Chiefs did, they got about $4 million cap space Derrick Johnson got more money, so more guaranteed money. He basically gets $11 million for that first season. 2017 rolls around, he basically gets $5 million for that season. So in his first 2 seasons of that contract, he already gets 16 of the $21 million that he was originally promised on that contract. Now, we all know what happened in 2018. The Chiefs decided to let him go. He never sees the 3rd year of that 3-year contract, but he does see 16 of that $21 million. So he actually made very good money off of that contract, in spite of the fact that he only plays in 2 of those seasons. Now he's with the Raiders, 1 year, $1.5 million. We hope he does well with the Raiders, at least when he's not playing the Chiefs, I hope, for all you Kansas City fans. But for Derrick Johnson, this is his career. He's going to have about $64 million. If he plays a couple more seasons, he could even add to that, of course, start pushing that $70 million mark if he's playing well. He's made about $64 million in his career. He's done really well for himself. And Derrick Johnson just had a really monster career with the Chiefs. It was not always rosy. It was not always easy. But he ends up having a really tremendous career for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City fans are going to miss him very much. Thank you for watching. This is Sports and Money Vintage. I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Goodbye.